Welcome back. This is the fourth video in my beading method series. Today we're going to look at double needle beading. And once you have this one down, you're ready to bead whatever you need to do. All right, if you've been following along, you know that I will use a whiteboard to illustrate the steps as we go. So the game plan today is to fill in this outline of this flower petal first. Then we'll fill it from the outside. So to anchor my thread, I need to poke my needle up from behind at the starting line, pull it all the way through so it stops at the knot, then back down just a short distance away, 1/8 of an inch or maybe 3 millimeters away, going the direction I'm going to go, and then back up one more time in my original location. The reason I do that is so that the knot will now never slip through the fabric, the beads will never come off. Now that I have my thread anchored, I've also threaded another needle and knotted the end of the thread, because after all, this is 2 needle beading. I'm just going to set this aside for now because we're going to use it soon. First, just like we did for single needle beading, we're going to need to put about 30 beads on our thread. Okay, I've got my 30 beads. I'm going to see if that's enough to get me to where I need to go. And it is not. Now I'm going to do something a little bit weird, and I'm going to intentionally put on too many to show you the advantage of 2 needle beading. Okay, now I definitely have too many, but I'm going to stick with it just to demonstrate something. Now, we don't want these beads to slide back down again. We want them to stay where they are. So I make what I call a toggle bead. This last bead that I put on, I am going to go back through it in the same direction in which I put it on the thread. Let me just show you what that looks like. So the thread goes through the bead and then wraps around and goes through it again. Now it acts as a stopper, so those beads can't fall off, but it's also easy to remove if I need to add more beads. Additionally, I can slide it down and maintain a nice tension on those beads without knotting it permanently and having a hard time taking it off if I've put too many beads on. So in single needle beading, we checked and decided whether we had too few or too many. In double needle beading, we don't worry so much because we can make that change later. I find it really useful beading long lines using double needle beading instead of trying to keep the tension and the amount of beads perfect all the time. Now I'm going to put down my first needle, pick up my second. Just as I did for single needle or for any time I use a new thread, I want to anchor that thread near where I'm going to start. This thread now is going to be the thread I use to sew the beads in place. So I'm going to use one of the threads to string the beads and one of the threads to sew them down. And every other bead, I'm going to sew them down. I come up between 2 beads, hop over, and go back down to sew down the thread that runs through the beads. You do need to work a little bit to keep each of your threads from getting tangled, but this one gives lots of control and lots of freedom to make adjustment later. All right, I'm going to continue sewing them all down. Okay, you can see that I've reached the end, but I've got too many beads on. That's not a problem because I left that toggle bead there. So all I need to do is take the needle off my second needle, remove the beads I don't need, which I can clearly see how many that is now, re-thread this needle, and then finish the row just as though I was single needle beading. So I'm going to put my needle down at the end of the row, and I'm ready for the next row inside. So I'm going to come back up, string on all my beads, then I'm going to make my toggle bead, snug it up so that my beads can't fall off, and then switch needles and use my other needle to sew across the threads that run through the beads about every other bead. Coming up on one side of my row of beads, hopping over and going back down to sew down the thread that goes between them. Okay, in this case you can see I've got the exact right number of beads, so I don't need to mess with that toggle bead. All I need to do is take my other needle and finish the row by sewing down. All right, time for some time lapse. I'm going to fill in the rest using this method. And there we have it. Our last step, now that we're finished our beadwork, is to remove the paper from the front. And some people like to get really picky and go in with tweezers. If that's your style, you know, you do you. On the back, we're going to tie this off the same way we always have, which is to skim just a little pinch of fabric 3 or 4 times. I can cut that off, and I can remove the border of this adhesive. There it is, all done. Well done. You've now got a full toolbox of beading methods at your disposal and hopefully some completed beadwork. If you missed my playlist about getting ready to assemble your moccasins, here's a link to it now. And please hit subscribe so that you get notified as soon as those assembly videos are ready for you.